Hello, welcome to the Seer Mother podcast. I am excited today because I have with me in the studio Lieutenant Oluseun Oyewale, an active duty Air Force officer. And we're going to be deliberating on a topic titled When Love Spins. But before we go into the topic, I would like her to introduce herself. So, hello, Sheung, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Simi. I'm doing well.
All right. Would you let the audience know more about you because you wear many
Absolutely.
hats amongst other
Absolutely.
things?
Like Dr. Simi said, my name is Lieutenant Oyewale. I am currently an officer in the United States Air Force. I am a cybersecurity officer, but also I do own my accounting firm. It's called Trust Bar. So Trust Bar is a modern CPA firm where we believe in proactive planning for for individuals and businesses. So we're more so focused on proactive planning versus just reactive filing. And that's what we pride ourselves about. Before joining the US Air Force, I actually served the Internal Revenue Service. I was a revenue agent, which is basically an auditor. And I was auditing people in Austin, Texas. And that experience really made me understand the need for Trust Bar so that individuals are planning and not just filing their taxes.
Thank you, Sheung. What a warm introduction. I encourage you to patronize Trust Bar. All right, so let's get started. Like I said, today's episode is titled When Love Spins. And let me just give you a little bit of background. What led to this topic? I was going through my phone archives, my camera archives, and I stumbled across a 360 video clip of my husband and I from sometime last October when we had a marriage seminar in church. And, I looked at the clip and I saw her spinning. At one point, it looked like someone was going to fall. And then we held steady. And as I thought about it, it made me think that at times marriage feels like spinning. It literally feels like you're spinning. And so today I'm wondering, I want to hear, especially because Lieutenant Oyewale wears many hats, and I'm sure that she has experienced, a lot of spinning in marriage. And when I say spinning, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as, the 360 video. But then what it tells us is that in marriage, seasons change, things shift. I know that before now, before you joined the military, there was a season of marriage, and now that you've joined the military, it's an entirely different season for you. So, would you tell us a little bit about your time before you became active duty Air Force officer? What did your marriage look like? And then we'll go into the different shifts.
That's a really, really interesting perspective. And I think for me personally, I would actually like to go back to when I just got married, right? So in
Okay.
2018, I got married and I was really young when I got married. And that was a specific season. And over the years, there's been multiple seasons that have occurred. And I know that as I continue to grow older with my husband and my children, there will be more seasons as well. So, I and my husband like to talk about how we miss the days when we would just binge a movie on Netflix or binge a series and not have to worry about anything or anybody, right? And that was right when we got married. We had that opportunity to just relax and not worry about anything, right? And then after that, we had our first son and then our second son. And that's a different season in its own, right? When the baby comes, sleepless nights, that's a season. And then
Absolutely.
right now is another season. But I think for what I would say in every season, just maximize the opportunities. Enjoy the season, basically. Because even though I say I miss those days, I absolutely enjoy these days when I can have a conversation with my 4-year-old son and he can tell me, oh, what he did at school. I mean, we're like best friends, right? So enjoy every season of marriage. The different seasons, but just maximize whichever season you're in and enjoy all the benefits that it provides.
Thank you, Lieutenant Oyewale. This is very interesting. Like I said, as I watched that 360 video spinning, I realized that one of the things that we held on to at the moment, in the moment when we were on that base that was spinning, was just trying to steady our feet, on the base so that we don't fall off. What would you say are some things that has helped you in the moments where marriage spinned in different directions? Like, first and foremost, you were a young couple married, binge watching next Netflix over the weekends, and then all of a sudden baby comes. Of course, baby season comes with its own fair share of challenges besides all the cooing of the baby and all of that. So what would you say are some things that held you steady at the time?
I know it might sound cliche, but I'm definitely going to say the grace of God.
It's
That
not
is
cliche.
definitely number one.
It isn't cliche. I
That,
absolutely concur and agree 100 times over. That isn't cliche.
yeah, so that's my number one answer, the grace of God. Number two answer is my husband, having an understanding partner, someone that's willing to help, someone that's willing to do whatever he can do to make my life easier. And then number three would be just the support of family and friends. Friends, I take friends very seriously. Even though over the last 8 years, I've probably lived in four different states, but anywhere I am, I prioritize a community, having a good support system. So really, all of those are what helps me, even if I'm in a spinning situation or things are changing or we're in that kind of scenario.
And yes, we can underestimate the role of support, family, friends, because God did not intend for us to live this life alone. He absolutely wanted us to be relational. And so just not living out that support of family and friends is always very crucial. Thank you for that. Again, like I said, that day as we spent on that 360 video equipment, the awareness that the base of that system or that setup held us together, held us steady, was very strong because personally, I'm someone that doesn't like heights and I don't like rotating. I don't know if you motion, just rotating. I don't know if you understand what I mean. However, just knowing that the base was supportive, the awareness of that, kept us going. So, in marriage, as far as you're concerned, from your years of marriage, what would you say that your awareness of your husband's pattern, his communication styles, what would you say, how would you say that has helped, in stabilizing your marriage?
Well, that's a really good question. To be honest, we struggled initially. It was a struggle. uh, my husband is a very simple person, calm, reserved person. And I remember when we had our first son, I would need his support sometimes, and I would call him in an elevated tone. In my mind, that was meant to communicate the urgency of my need. However, to him, that was very disrespectful. And it took me a little bit of time to realize that, oh, this is a no-no. But I eventually realized, and since then, it's made our communication much easier. I know that if I'm coming to him to ask for something, I should not scream his name or shout his name. No, I should just come as I would come normally. So, I mean, I think it was a misunderstanding because I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I was just trying to signal urgency, but he did not like that at all. So yeah, that's one example of when communication styles, understanding your partner's communication style is very crucial to ensure effective communication.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Oyewale. I mean, that was a very interesting one. I like that angle, because a lot of times our, communication is three parts. You have the verbal, then you have your tonality, and of course your body language. And what I hear you talking about right here is your tone, your tonality. You are thinking, oh, if I raise my voice more, it's going to probably sense the urgency, and but then in his own from his own perspective he feels that is disrespectful. And that's one thing that we all need to note in marriage, just that awareness and understanding the communication needs of our spouses, understanding what can trigger some negative emotional reaction. In this
Mhm.
story that you illustrated, over time, you quickly realize that whether you increase the volume or you lower the volume, help was still going to come. And it took a little bit of you getting to understand that no matter what the situation is, you just needed to have a steady tone of voice. And again, for him, it was in some way disrespectful. And now that you know that, understanding that pattern, I want to believe that things have since improved, and at least in that regard you have better connection. Would you say that?
Definitely, absolutely. Now I know not to shout, like because it's like counterproductive. When you shout, that's when nothing gets. But when you speak, normally, then yeah, I've learned.
That's good. That's good to know. Now, as a military spouse, how would you say this has impacted your marriage, especially with young children, and in terms of your connection and working together in this relationship?
So, like you mentioned, now my husband is the military spouse. Previously, I was the military spouse when my husband was in the military. But again, I'm going to go back to my point about support. The military offers a lot of programs for young families. For example, they actually have something they're offering tomorrow to allow parents to, go hang out or have some time, and then they provide childcare.
Interesting. Are you all going to hang out tomorrow
Oh,
and
definitely,
give the
absolutely.
boys
We're going
and
to
make
take
use of
advantage
that
of that.
service?
So yes, we key into all the resources really.
That's
We're very resourceful. So on base, on the Air Force base, there's so many resources. There's the youth center. So we
oh,
put our boys in a lot of sports that are very subsidized. The prices are very affordable. Also,
okay.
we use the facilities on base. So really, it's just the support that we make sure we leverage all the support that is available for young military families. And that helps with communication. We believe that we should keep our boys busy because we're busy people, we're busy professionals, so we like to keep our kids busy as well, and we just take advantage of all the resources around us.
That is so good to know. In terms of resources, many relationships suffer a lot of stress just because they don't leverage on the resources that are available. And I know that not everyone listening to us is part of the military, but one of the things that as a when okay, my daughter is 20, so but back in the early days when she was younger, obviously, my husband was already out of the military, but we did also leverage on, friends, resources from friends, when, she could probably go over and spend time with a family friend whilst we had our date nights or we got to do something together. So I definitely recommend this for young families and any family at that. I think this is a good way of allowing space for yourselves to get to know yourselves better and to continue to rediscover yourself. Because one of the other things I realize is that turnings aren't going to stop. You know how when I was on that 360, we kept spinning and spinning. I mean, it was programmed to stop at a particular time. But as a young couple, what would you say are some measures you've put in place? I mean, no one prepares for storms or any adversity in life, but we all know life happens. And What kind of mindset does a young couple need to have to prepare for those unexpected turns? I mean, I'm sure you prepared to go into the military. It was planned. But what about some unexpected turns that can just show up in a marital relationship? What are some advice you would give to a young couple?
That's a very good question. I would actually like to add some more points on the self-care. So with the self-care situation, it's very important, not
Yeah,
just for mothers, for fathers. Another thing that we do that works here is that sometimes we take turns. So for example, my husband loves to play soccer. For him, that's a way to that's self-care for him. He loves it. We take turns.
stress
He would do his
relief.
thing with soccer or sports. I'll be with at home with the kids. I might need to go on a spa date with my girlfriends. I would go and it would be at home with the kids. So we both have our self care moments where the other party takes care of the kids and takes care of the house. Just wanted to put that out because that is critical. I don't think it's
I
right
love
for
it.
just,
I love it
yeah, I
because
don't think it's right for just one parent to enjoy all the time outside while the
all
other
the
parent
me
is
time, me
exactly,
time, men's
exactly.
cave. I think that, yeah, that's
Yes,
interesting. That's
yes,
an interesting
absolutely.
perspective.
So I wanted to definitely stress on that. But to your
Okay.
question, so again, I don't want to sound cliche, but I'm a Christian, right? So I do think that, the word of God is very powerful. We definitely owe that really dear to our hearts, and that guides us. So in the Bible, there are different times God has, told us that He will not forsake us, right? And when we got married, the plan is that we would be married forever, right? That's the plan. And we tend to abide by the guidance from God, right? So we know that for us, our marriage is a kingdom marriage, right? So basically, we do everything possible that we can do to make sure that we're aligned with God's purpose for our marriage. So again, like even though things are not easy, what we typically would do is we would communicate, make sure we're communicating very well, and not just in the moment of crisis or in the moment of problems. We communicate a lot, we over communicate. Throughout the day, we're texting back and forth. If there's a change, a small change in my schedule, I text. A small change in his schedule, I need some help picking up the kids, I need this, I need that. We're always texting. So that's one thing that has worked really well for us. We over communicate. But again, we needed to understand our communication styles before the communication actually became effective, right? Because some people, they over communicate, but the other person is not hearing anything, right?
Understanding
So it
them.
definitely, there's value in understanding your spouse's communication style, right? I think that's the first place to even start. And then once you do, then you should over communicate. So that's one thing, communication. The other thing for us is just trust, right? So we've established trust, and there are certain things we know that just because we have a kingdom marriage, we know that, like I don't even have to worry about certain things, basically, by the grace of God. And so does my spouse. So, like, there's no need to worry about certain things because we know that the word of God guides us, and the guidance is just what we go by, right? So yeah, communication, trust, understanding, and just having a nice person, really. Again, I know it's simple,
Yeah,
but I feel like if you're with a kind person, you're good, right? So yeah, those are the things that I would say that have held us during like any any drastic spins in the marriage.
absolutely. Thank you so much. And you have touched on quite a number of important things. And number one being the God factor. We are speaking from a faith based perspective, and being people of faith, we definitely anchor marriages on the word of God. And you know how we're saying, no, no, no turning back. It's almost like we've decided, and we're going to stick through it, no matter what is going on. But I also want to reiterate what you said about communication. Effective communication can help a marriage, especially when the spins of life is happening. And many couples don't really take time to understand themselves. They don't take time to understand each other's communication style. They don't take time to see where each person is coming from. I often tell couples, you are on the same team. No one is going to win the medal for winning an argument. And just being kind to each other, you touched on that. It's so, so critical. We can't overemphasize that. And so I just feel like it is important for us to keep telling ourselves, our friends, to make sure that they are very aware of the communication patterns of their spouses. Make sure they go into counseling if they need it. Make sure to attend, marriage workshops and programs that can help them become better, because no one was born doing this. Every one of us in marriage, we got the certificate before we took the exams. The spins are like some of the exams, and except we have God on our side, as well as all of the resources we need in terms of communicating effectively, then we might run into trouble. And
And
so
and the
again,
other
I
thing, if I might actually
sure,
add,
sure,
is
sure.
that marriage involves two people that were raised
Yes,
differently, right? Two people that are different. In one person's household growing up, it could have been okay for the mom to, speak a little bit louder, and that was fine. But in the other person, that never happened, right? So two people coming together, different upbringing. It's very critical to go through some form of counseling or coaching to be able to understand communication styles. That's baseline. Because once you can figure out your spouse's communication style, it's like magic. Now you know
yes.
what to say
You
or how to say it to get what you want. So,
you just nailed it. You just nailed it, Lieutenant. You did nail that. And again, I'm just going to say that for some people that are a little bit skeptical about coaching, about behavioral assessments, I'm going to say that those things can be very helpful. Now, let's talk a little bit about, some of our cultural backgrounds, like what you just said. Again, family background, cultural background. Really, would you say that the fact that a spouse is from the same race, maybe speak the same language in terms of native tongue, would you say that that is enough for a marriage to thrive?
absolutely not.
Obviously not. I just wanted to make sure that, we reiterated that. Obviously not, because for you and your spouse, I understand that you're from the same race, and you obviously are both Christians, but that didn't even suffice. That didn't suffice. And so, as a person of faith, in addition to the word of God, it is just so important to understand your spouse's communication language, and to make sure that from time to time you're blending, you're augmenting, you are accentuating your strengths, in the marriage, because you are not meant to compete against each other. You are meant to complement each other. And so the more you know of each other, the more aware you are of each other's styles, the better it is for you to be able to complement each other. For example, if you know that someone is very detail oriented, it doesn't matter when you start picking roles, it is usually just better for the person that is more detail oriented to be the one to take the lead when it comes to detail oriented task in the marriage. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So again, in general, I believe that like just use your strengths because there's certain things that that I'm not good at. And
Yes.
it's good to work on weaknesses, improve and make it, be better. But that time, if you focus on your strength, you could, probably achieve more, right? While still improving your weaknesses. But I do think, and I agree with you that the strengths, everyone should leverage their strengths. So again, couples need to figure out. what are your strengths? What do you enjoy doing? What gives you joy? And what are mine? And find areas in the marriage where each party could just focus on their strengths, double down, and achieve more productivity versus, having the other person struggle through tasks and things like that. And again, like this even cuts across different topics in marriages, which sometimes we call them departments, right? So we have like
Yes.
finance department, which is the money matters of the family. We have the children department, which is everything about the kids and
Parenting.
their care, their future, and all of that. And there's other parts of marriage that we term as department in my family. But basically, in those as well, people should leverage their strengths. The woman might be better at managing the finances, which in my household I am better because I'm a
I can
certified
tell.
public accountant, right? So I do that, but that doesn't mean that my husband is not the provider. That's totally different, right? He is the
And
provider,
that
but I
doesn't
am
mean, and
managing
that
it.
doesn't mean that it can have a say, in financial decisions. At times we
Exactly.
think that because someone is taking care of a specific task, the other person cannot have a say, have opinions.
Exactly. To your point, we're not fighting, we're not competing, right? We're a
Yeah,
team. So as many
yeah.
opinions, as many feedback as you have, again, the goal is to make it better, right? So like, one thing that we've started to do is just like, once a year we sort of meet together in terms of finances. We have like a meeting, we set it on the calendar, we talk about it, look at the numbers, the charts, whatever. And that's another opportunity for people to provide their feedback and their opinions and things like that. So sometimes even just scheduling some time like that reserved for you and your spouse to just talk about your department, whatever department that you're handling 100% of, or 80, 90, whatever. Have some time so that your spouse understands it as well, and your spouse is looped into what's going on there.
You see how you transition from communication to connection. See, because if you're talking, earlier on you mentioned that you and your spouse, you text throughout the day, you keep each other in the loop. If something changes on your schedule, you notify him. Gradually communication transitions into connection because at this point you're very connected, you're very intentional about setting out time to talk over departments, like you said, if it's someone that does anything education, because I'm an educator, and so I tend to kind of have more information than my spouse. It's important for me to give him an overview, let him understand what is going on, why I think this is the best route to go when we start making decisions about education matters. And in your
Mhm.
case, you are, more financially savvy. You're the subject matter expert, a CPA at that. Obviously it's just very logical and it just makes perfect sense to have you run the finances. And so
Mhm.
when we see marriages that struggle just because people are not leveraging on each other's strength, then it's a huge concern. And I think that everyone listening to us should continue to work on this aspect of marriage. But before we wrap up here, I wanted to go back to a point you made earlier on, and this is about the issue of me time. Um, that's self care. Because
Mhm.
if you don't take care of yourself, you're drained. And when you're drained, you cannot function effectively. That's when you have short tempers. And I think that and this might sound like a stereotype, but I think that for a lot of African women, because we think that from our upbringing, the mom, the wife does everything, many African women have put themselves in the bondage of I don't have to rest. I'm a superwoman. I just have to try to do all those things. So I think that it is very important for every woman to also realize that they are not superhuman. They need to pause, take that me time, take care of yourself. Like you said, in your own case, you go out with your friends, you hang out, maybe go to the spa, just do something that helps you feel relaxed and makes you feel happy. That way you are not having resentments when your spouse has gone to do their own thing. So
Mhm.
your spouse, if you went out with your friends you went to spa last week, and this weekend your spouse decides, I'm just going to go out and play a soccer game with some of my friends, you are not going to feel bad, because in
Mhm.
the first instance, yours cost more, his is even less expensive, if
Agree.
you know what I mean. But the
Mhm.
fact that a number of women tend to just box themselves up and feel like, yes, I don't need to take some time to myself. And I really think this is a culture that needs to be changed. This is a culture that
Absolutely.
needs to
And the other thing is when, for example, if the woman actually goes out, number one, she's building friendship, she's building more
Yes,
support, which again, I mentioned support and friends a lot. And also, she's also allowing the dad to bond with the kids. That is very important. And that is something we don't really emphasize. It's
we
just
don't.
as important for the dad to
Yes,
bond with the kids. I remember watching this podcast where, they had recommended that parents should try to spend, even if it's just 20 minutes per day, connecting with the child, right? And that's the mom, the dad, just connect with the child. And I think when the mom goes out, the dad can do that. So yeah, I think it's very important, self care.
thank you so much. So, as we wrap up here, one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation is awareness of our husband's communication, our spouse's communication style, because I believe some men are going to be seeing this podcast. So, your spouse's communication styles, its patterns, just understanding how they operate, the modus operandis of, their behavior, and being able to leverage on that awareness to better connect and improve your relationships. So, do you have any final word for any young family out there, professionals, just people like you? What will be your final thoughts?
So I believe my final thoughts will definitely be that communication is very critical. I know we've stressed that a lot on this podcast today. But I also do think that there's a lot of resources out there that you can use to educate yourself. Even if for some reason you're not able to afford coaching right now, you can potentially find resources. On YouTube, there's a lot of videos that you can watch about different communication styles and different other aspects of your life. Really, there's so much resources out there that I do think if people actually spend time leveraging the resources, we would have better outcomes. And I also want to encourage young mothers. I know that it's a lot, with raising the kids and everything we have to do, and also be a wife. But I do think that it's also important to build friendships and build relationships and actually bond with people and have connections with people outside your own, right? I do think it's very critical for mental health. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, those are my last words of advice.
Alrighty, as we wrap up, I want to say a very big thank you to you for your time, Lieutenant Oyewale. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And I'm also very appreciative knowing that you do also have your side business, which is Trust Bar, a certified public accountant, and you have managed to keep your own balanced. I mean, with the help of God, the grace of God. And I thank God for your life, and I pray that the grace of God will continue to help you. And to all our viewers out there, I want to say that marriage is not about perfection, it is just about leveraging on God's grace, growing ourselves, obviously, and some of the things Lieutenant Oyewale said about watching podcasts, listening to reading books, like self-help, and also making friends, because a lot of times when you are alone, it just feels as if the whole weight of the world is on your shoulders, but you lighten
Mhm.
up when you talk with other moms and you kind of hear some of their own challenges, and they give you ideas of how they are managing and how they are walking through and navigating some of this life spins. But again, I'm so glad we had this conversation. And as we move into the Valentine's Day weekend, I want to encourage everyone, make sure you are getting things that can grow your marriage. It's not always about romance. Romance, it's good in itself, but growth is so important. Connect with your spouse, get to know them better, and I pray and hope that everybody's marriages stays in the Lord and rest on the grace of God. So, with that being said, we'll see you some other time. It's been a delight having you. This is the Seer Mother podcast. We'll see you again. God bless you.